for day three series of sessions of Atal sponsored faculty development program on trends and challenges in electrical vehicles. Today we are gathered here for again a third day three sessions of seventh session on the title Distributor Control for Microgrid. So it gives me an immense pleasure in welcoming today's speaker, Dr. Rajesh Kumar sir. Received his BTech degree from NIT Kurukshetra, India, MTech degree in Power System, and the PhD degree in Intelligence System, MNIT Jaipur. He was postgraduate research fellow in the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering at the National University of Singapore from 2009 to 2011. Currently, he has been working as a professor with the Department of Electrical Engineering, MNIT Jaipur. Dr. Rajesh Kumar research interest focus on intelligence system, machine intelligence, power management, smart grid, and robotics. Dr. Kumar has published over 450 research articles, had supervised 20 PhD and more than 30 MTech theses. He has 12 patents to his name. He received 3 academic awards, 12 Best Paper Awards, 6 Best Thesis Award, 4 Professional Award, and 25 Student Award. He has received the Career Award for Young Teacher in 2002 from the Government of India. He is on 12 journal editorial boards. Also, he is an associate editor for IEEE Access, IEEE, ITEN, associate editor, Swarm and Evolutionary Computation, Elsevier, associate editor, IET, Renewable and Power Generation, associate editor, IET Power Electronics, associate editor, International Journal of Bio-Inspired Computing and Deputy Editor-in-Chief, CAI Transaction on Intelligence Technology, IET. Dr. Kumar is a senior member IEEE USA, Fellow IET UK, Fellow IE India, Fellow IETE Life Member CSI, Senior Member of IEANG and Life Member of ISTE. It is a blessed moment for everyone to have you, sir. On behalf of Shri Ishwar College of Engineering and Department of Mechanical Engineering, we welcome you, sir, for this program. Now the session is for you, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much, and I hope I am audible to everyone.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. Good morning to all. Let me share the screen. I hope my screen is visible to everyone.
Yes, sir. It is visible, sir.
Okay, fine. Yeah, thank you very much. And okay, welcome you all in this session, which is on distributed control and for microgrid. But this thing, the approach, what we are going to discuss today, that you can apply anywhere, maybe grid level, microgrid level, or power control or management in electric vehicle or process unit in your mechanical engineering. This one is a very interesting domain and people have successfully implemented. We have tested this approach of multi-agent system for microgrid as well as for a manufacturing unit in a production pipeline. So we'll discuss that how this multi-agent system can be used, and then what actually it is, what are the various components of it, and then we talk about how to design it and then how to realize it. So that will be the today's agenda for next 1.5 hours. Starting with the microgrid, so this one is basically a microgrid. When we talk about a microgrid, what we have in a microgrid is, let me take a highlight. Laser pointer. from electrical engineering, let's make it the things very simple. PCC is point of common coupling. That means your regional area is connected to the main grid. That is a, you can say PCC. Like if you have in your university, you have say solar generation, some DGs are there, some wind generation is there, but at one point you are connected with the external grid also. Okay, so that is the point of common coupling. These are the other resources like wind turbine, DG1, DG2, DGN. These are the other resources from where we can have electricity. And then we put all the electricity on a common bus because they generate a AC, AC voltage. And then similarly also we have generation from PV, fuel cell, storage. Okay, we put them on a DC bus. So we have both type of loads, AC loads as well as DC loads. So if the loads are DC, we can supply from DC bus. If they are AC, we can supply from AC bus. And if we want to switch over from AC to DC, we can have AC DC converter. This one is a simple microgrid. So you consider a simple arrangement that in a university or in an area we have PV installed there, we have fuel cells there, we have battery storage system, we have wind, and then we have loads also. So that is basically one kind of a microgrid arrangement there, and they are connected with the external grid. So if they are taking a supply from the external grid, so then it is a grid connected microgrid, and if the external grid is not connected, then it's a self-sustained microgrid. And the important is here because we have different resources, so many sources are there, we have different loads, we have to manage it, and that is really a challenge there. This type of arrangement you can think of in some other structures also, like if you take a case of a power network of a ship, there we have many generators, many types of load, many types of requirement. So you can consider as a very uh, small grid arrangement. Similarly, you can have small grid arrangements in your even your desktops also. We have different level of voltages. Uh, though there we are taking the energy from the outside, but if there is some kind of storage is there, then it can be considered in that kind of a scenario. But that is not our main agenda. Agenda is if this kind of situation is there, then how to handle it. And this is one setup. See, this one is one microgrid. In future what is going to happen is something different. Future will be like this. You will have a lot of microgrids. Okay, nowadays we can see that every house or every building, big building, is having a PV on the rooftop of it. There is a storage, so they are very good candidate consider as a microgrids. And now you can see that there are so many microgrids here, and they are connected with each other. So if I take this cluster here on the extreme left side, considering MG15 to MG21, these are the microgrids. Okay, now MG15 microgrid has many possibilities. They can use their own generation. If they are short of it, they can take it from the grid. If the grid is not available, they can take it from MG24. They can take it from MG16, they can take it from MG18, they can take it from MG17. So that increase the reliability of the system because we have many suppliers near around. So power failure chances are very less. But at the same time, if my architecture is like this is a very complex architecture. And then how to control it? If it is not controlled, then this arrangement will create a lot of problem for the users also. So we go for a certain kind of a arrangement, and let's understand how to process for that. So this one is our conventional, like right now what is being used most of the places. We have generations. Okay, far away we have generations, and the generations, their information is connected to the fiber uh, media or some another media, so that all the information that comes to this uh, virtual power plant or one unit, that okay, how much is the generation. Similarly, from the load side, we get the information that how much is the load requirement. And based upon these two, this unit here, which is, you can see the brain is put there, they make a decision that okay, how the power is to be transferred from the generation to the load. And they try to make a balance because as per the theory of electrical engineering, generation has to be equal to the demand plus losses. So if I neglect the losses, the generation has to be as good as the demand. But the issue with that is that is basically uh, uh, we need to understand the information from the demand side and from the generation side. But just imagine that if any of the link is broken, say this link is broken at the top, we will not have any information about the customers. Okay, how much is the load? And then things are things are in problematic situation. Similarly, if any link on this side is broken, then we don't know how much is to be generated. So this one is centralized unit. This one is centralized system of working, where all the information goes to one place, and then the decision is being taken there. That's a disadvantage also. So the another option for this one is shift from that one to another kind of operation and control. And what is that? That you can see this now. The brain is at many places. Okay. So what is the brain signal? Brain is basically there is a communication between each other. So now if this link is broken here, then okay, this information comes from this part, that how much is the requirement, and that information is shared. So if any link is broken, then the information is shared between each other. And even if say the link is broken to this part, which is at the top, this link and this link both are broken, even then we have information from the generation, we have information from the load. So these four small brains, they interact with each other, and they can take a decision. So this one is the distributed control. Things are distributed, and in many places it works very fine. So to adjust or to address this type of a mechanism, a theory is being proposed long back. Initially, it was proposed in management area, but later people implemented to engineering problems, and it is a very good uh, solution to go to use it for distributed control, and that is known as multi-agent system. Let's understand first what is a multi-agent system. People define it in a different way. Okay, so before going into the definition of it, let's take one example, and we keep that example for whole of the session, so that we can understand this multi-agent system in most easiest form. Say now this FTP is being organized. Okay, so this FTP is being organized. So this is the event which is to be organized, and there are various three people who are involved in it. Some person is, or some faculty is involved, whose job is to connect the various participants. There is another faculty whose job is to connect to talk to various speakers. There is another faculty whose job is to take care of the arrangement of financial matters and talking to AICT and other things. And there may be another faculty whose job is to take care of all online platforms and all these things. So there are say four people who are involved in it, and and they have their own specific jobs, and they all try to do, they do all that those things for the success of this workshop. So that is basically nothing but a distributed way of doing the things, and that is each of the faculty is considered an agent. Now you if you see everything from that perspective, you will find the answers there. If not this one, you consider that your institution, you have one director, you have then deans, you have HODs, you have faculty, and this each one is having assigned certain kind of a job, and they can be considered as an agent. Now let's go for the definition. Initially it was defined in 1993 that agent components are beliefs, capabilities, choices, and commitment. And that is exactly what I'm talking about. Later on, software comes into the picture. So then the definition is modified, and it is modified to that, okay, agent is having some kind of a communication language. And it's very obvious when we interact with each other, there must be some communication language. Later on, 1995, it is further modified because intelligence comes into the research domain. So they say that, okay, there must be intelligent agents must be intelligent to perform something like perception about the conditions, to take actions to the depending upon the environment, and then solve the problems, draw some inferences, determine actions. These are the properties of an intelligent system. So they introduce these features also into the agent. So they redefine the things there. Later on, a few more things comes into this. So it depends. With the time, new things keep on coming, and people keep on keep on adding those things to the definition of an agent. So in summarized form, we can say that agent is basically an entity who has autonomy, reactiveness, proactiveness, and social abilities. And and that can perform certain things, jobs which are assigned to it. Okay, so that is basically a working definition of an agent. So there are two types of system. One is single agent system, and another one is multi-agent system. Okay, so multi-agent means many agents, they combine to perform certain tasks. Single agent means one person is doing everything. So now you can think of any event which is being conducted anywhere around you. You can think of whether the working structure is single agent or it is a multi-agent. Okay, and when we are working, whether it's electrical engineering or mechanical or some other engineering aspect, we have few things there. There is always an environment from where we take the inputs and we perform certain actions. We need a knowledge. So if it is multi-agent, uh, we have distributed knowledge, we have distributed skills and expertise. If it is a single agent, then we have a limited knowledge, limited expertise and skills. Next part is design, how you design it. You can be design a homogeneous environment, you can design something other than that also, heterogeneous also. And there must be an interaction. So you need to define the rules for that. I'll explain these things, how they will affect our control process also. But the important part is how your multi-agent learn, or how you learn as such. So the learning process is very simple. We perform certain action, okay, and then these actions go to the real environment, and then environment returns us two things. One, the next state, or next thing, depending upon my action, and the second thing is the reward. Reward may be positive, may be negative. If your reward is positive, you are pushed for do something more good. So your action, so you can go in that state and then keep on making some more decisions. If the reward is negative reward, that means this is a wrong decision, you should not do it. And that is how we learn. Same thing we can do it in computing also. uh, in computing, our agent performs certain action, okay, and then it returns some new state, and the reward as a gain, negative gain or positive gain. So this is how we learn the things, and this is how the agent also learn the things from any environment. See, a robot is there. So there are various ways. One is you train the robot. The other one is you let the robot move and let it to hit certain object, and then if it hit it, then in the algorithm you added that it's a negative gain. So next time it will not try to avoid left or right, not to hit that particular object, because the reward is negative, something like that. So that is how multi-agent learn the things there. There are various agents there, they have specific job, I told you. So the important is the coordinating agent, who will coordinate. So there are two types of coordinate. Now these are the planning. Basically, when you develop the structure, this one is planning. Okay, one is centralized multi-agent planning. Okay, so centralized multi-agent planning means in this workshop or in your institute or whatever is their environment, there is only one person who is receiving all the information. Okay, so say there are four sub coordinators there and there is one main coordinator. Okay, say HOD is the main coordinator and there are four other uh, coordinators there. So what is the centralized multi-agent planning? Centralized multi-agent planning is each of the four coordinators, they will tell each and everything to the HOD and then he will take the decision. That is centralized. Distributed means all the rest four, they have information of each other and then they combine the information for the goodness of or for the success of this workshop. So that's the difference between centralized multi-agent planning and distributed multi-agent planning. Both have advantages and disadvantages. If it is purely centralized, what will happen? The person who is top, he is having a lot of receipts. He will be overburdened, and that takes a lot of time. Overstressed, and things become more. If it is algorithm, then it will take more and more time to take a decision. And then, most important, if he is not there because of any reason, then whole system collapses. Whereas in distributed, we have receipt of each other, and then if we have receipt of each other, that then everything is very. Then there are likely to be a good chances that mm, things will be much simpler and can be smoothly organized in that way. Okay, so that is basically the difference between these two approaches. So when you are designing any kind of a structure for control process, you need to understand that how much centralized you want and how much decentralized you want. Okay, so like here there are four, so they know each other that okay, how many participants, who is the speaker today, what is the time, and what is the platform. So then there is no need of sending receipts for every second to the centralized one, and things can be managed. But when we are processing these kind of things, we need to understand this kind of environment. There is always, you can see, overlapping. So this agent is this zone of operation, and this agent is having this zone of operation, and there is some kind of overlapping between them. Okay, so then these things must be clearly defined, otherwise there will be conflict. Uh, say the some another action also there depending upon that parameter, and they are contradicting each other, then the outcome will not be there, because the computer or the program will not understand that who's important, whose command to be followed. So this has to be very clear when you are designing a multi-agent system. This one is also very important, that is known as basically coherency. Coherency tells like how you behave as a unit, and this one is always measured from the person who is outside of that system. Like if we want to see that how good your institute is behaving, so this will be examined by the external person, that as a unit how you are behaving. And behaving means for the success, so the control process, so we can put certain parameters that my control of this mechanism or control of this whole pipeline is how well it is being organized. So for the success of that, we need a coherency, that these agents support each other, because the the they depend on each other. So if any of them is not behaving properly, then it will affect the whole of the system there. That is, these are the, so if you, till so far, if you have observed the terminologies and all these things, these are simple like humans, how we humans we do. And you can consider yourself as an agent, and then the things becomes much simpler there. If I talk about the applications where these are suitable, okay, so they are suitable for any kind of problem which are very complex. which cannot be solved by a single agent or single thing, like a building systems. We have lights, we have lifts, we have other arrangements there. So there are lot and lot of variabilities are there. If your system are very complex, you can break your big system into small system and operate them individually. You can use multi-agent system. If you need a different kind of expertise or knowledge, then again multi-agent system is good for that one. If you are developing a system which is dynamic reorganization, it keep on changing its organizations, you can use it for that particular purpose. Or if your task and informations are distributed. So if you see this thing, uh, distribution system or microgrid is a good example, because we have generations, so we have transformers, we have relays, we have equipments there. And each of them need a different kind of expertise. So we try to implement it in that section. Same is in the production pipeline. You have so many operations there. Somewhere it is cutting, milling, and somewhere some other shop is there. But when you see the product, it's a chain. Then how, and each unit behavior is totally different. The time, the processing, and all those things there. So we in such type of scenarios we can use multi agents as a controlling unit or processing system. It has a very good advantages. Advantage are they are extensible, they are robust. Uh, since the things are distributed, they are computationally fast, because one agent has to do a very small job. It's a dedicated job. That okay, if this signal come to you, the relay must be open. That's all. So it is that makes it computationally fast also. You can reuse them because you can use that particular unit at anywhere, and that reduces the cost somehow. But there are a lot of challenges also with such type of environment, and the first most important challenge is basically interaction and the protocols. So we have to develop it. When we are designing it, we have to develop a protocol first, that okay, there is some kind of hierarchy in your institute and the powers are delegated that way. There must be a certain kind of communication interaction protocols there. So that is the one kind of a challenge. If it is poorly designed, then it is always a problematic for us. Then you have to break your problem into small problems, decompose them, and then allocate the actions for individual agents. So there you need a certain kind of expertise. You need organization formation and planning and learning algorithms. So these are the few challenges which you will find when you are talking about multi-agent systems. There are two major classes of it. One is closed multi-agent system, another one is open multi-agent system. The best example of closed multi-agent is an organization or your family. You can consider your family. Your family is a closed multi-agent. Okay, so your father is having certain kind of jobs to perform. Mother has to perform certain jobs. Brother also certain jobs, and sister also certain jobs. So what do you do in a family? Now you can see the properties there. You have common language, so that is a property of a closed multi-agent system. Each agent can be developed as an expert, a mother for something, brother for something, father for something. Agents are cooperative because they help each other and for the success, for the growth of the family. Okay, and then multi developers can be used to for the same time. So these are just some good properties of closed multi-agent system. It's a static design, it's not changing, and components and functionalities are predefined, that who has to do what. Okay, there are certain advantages and disadvantages of if you design the system like this. Advantages are your load is distributed. Everything is simple and predictable, because who has to do what, we know that. Then if something is happening, we can easily understand who has done what, because we know the components, we know the language, we know the protocols, and they are cooperative. but there are certain disadvantages. That is, maintenance cost be high. They may be less fault tolerant. If the pressure is on any of one of them, it will be reflected throughout the whole of the system, and they are difficult to interoperate. One family and another family, their interactions are quite difficult one. So that's why this one is one issue with closed multi-agent system, that the interoperation is very difficult. These are so this system has certain advantages and disadvantages. On the other hand, open multi-agent system means there is no any static design. One agent, so single agents are there. They are expert of their own things. They may be non-cooperative, may be malicious or non-trustworthy. Maybe they combine and to perform certain tasks. And the example is open electronic marketplace. They have their advantage because each one is designed separately, so they are modular. You can combine the modules and get your things done. They are flexible and fault tolerant because they don't have dependency on each other. Whereas in closed multi-agent we have dependency of each other, but in open uh, they don't have that kind of dependency. And the design is evolutionary. You can evolve a totally new design. Whereas in closed multi-agent system, your design is static. You cannot evolve a new design there. They are easy to maintain, and they are dynamic. Disadvantages are there. You don't know overall behavior of the system. The reason is very simple, because they themselves are unpredictable. Okay, they may have different protocols, different languages and ontologies, so they create a problem. And maybe few of them malicious are there. So both system have certain advantages and disadvantages. So that depends upon us, how you want to develop your whole of the system or the whole of the network by using these properties. You can have purely closed, you can have purely open, you can have a combination of open and closed and anything like that. This one is very important, which is known as interaction. Because when we are working and when the things are distributed in a way, whether it's distributed or centralized, interaction is very important. How you talk to each other, how you communicate to each other, how you send the information to each other. And if there is a problem with that, then there are very likely your whole of the system will fail. So the interaction is very important. And you just think of that, okay, this workshop is coordinated by 4 people, and the fourth out of four, one is from south of India, another one is east of India, another one is center of India, and the third one is from north of India, and they know only their local language. So then how will they will do? There must be some kind of a common language between them, and they must interact with each other. If they don't interact, the event will fail. Okay, like all the 3 coordinators are there. Okay, they have their receipts, or they know their things, but the fourth one is not sharing the link of the platform for this workshop. Then there is the workshop will fail basically. So that is basically comes through the interaction and all these things, and these things are defined in certain kind of a ways in, like a simple kind of like engineering kind of. It's a philosophy plus combined with your engineering with mathematics and computing. So why we interact? There are certain goals, there are certain resources which we want to share, and there are certain expertise which we want to share with each other, and that's why we interacted. So this is a philosophical point of view, that okay, you are expert of coding, so I want to interact with you because I need coding in my problem, so I'll take your help. So these are the certain elements. So when you are developing your whole system, then you can see that okay, how to rearrange the things so that goals, resources and expertise can be shared. Okay, so these are the few elements which are there for interaction here. And then you have to put a characterization of an agent. There are two characterizations basically. One is self-interested agent, another one is cooperative agent, and both are important for a system. Okay, so you can say self-centered people, and you can say cooperative people. So what are the good points with self-centered or self-interested agents? Okay, uh, because they are self-centered, they always work for maximization of their own utility, not for the whole of the society. That's the property, basically self-centered. So we need, and when we develop a network, we need a control process. We need few agents which supposed to maximize the local benefit, local profits. So there we can define those agents as a characterize those agents as self interested in. Whereas cooperative agent, uh, they try to uh, maximize the profit or maximize the utility as a whole for the benefit of the entire system. But both have their positive and negative point. In the sense, self-centered is basically they are working for a localized problems, maximizing their time requirement will be less. If it is cooperative, taking a lot of receipts, talking to many of the other agents, taking a lot of time. So that is how we need to see that, okay, uh, which agent has to be cooperative and which agent has to be self-centric kind of structure. Communication, I already discussed with you why a common protocol uh, is required so that they can communicate with each other. So in this case, we have electronic equipments. Many IoT devices can be, each IoT device can act as an agent. So they interact with each other, and if they interact with each other, there must be some common protocol there so that they can talk to each other. Okay, knowledge is I already discussed with you. So this one is FIPA agent model on your screen. This one is approved by IEEE also. You can see here, this is one kind of agent platform where four sections are there. One is message transport system, which transport the message within and outside the agent. How it work with one example also. It look like this. You have real microgrid here, which is structure like this, and then each one block, which is say some kind of entity, is represented by an agent there, and they talk to each. So this agent, all this kind of structuring, that works on the computing system. There is an interface between computer and the real world. Decisions are being taken on on the computing system to control the things on the real world. This one is kind of a conceptual figure that how it works there. And what will be there uh, inside that agent? We have database. We keep on adding the data. So we have data collection module. We collect the data from the environment and update our data. We have decision making modules from where, okay, decision we take based upon certain knowledge. So we have knowledge base. We update our knowledge, and then we have communication module which will communicate to other one. So intelligence means this part. We have a decision making property there, and decision making property, it may be a fixed one like predefined. Okay, if this is condition, then outcome is this thing. So that is predefined, or it can be adaptive also. So that's basically that's a property of intelligent agent. When we are talking about whole this structure, this one is one of the most important area, because when agents are passing information to each other, that information must be secure enough. Okay, everything when we talk about whether it's a smartphone, smart grid, smart Medicare system, everywhere when you add the word smart, that smart means the communication basically. We have phones, but now we have phones in a different framework. So that communication part, how you are transferring the knowledge and presenting it, it should be secured enough. Otherwise, anybody can interrupt the signal and create a wrong message. So that is basically required there. So what is being done normally? This one is sending agent, which is sending the message. So it lock it, encrypt it, and send the encrypted message through this path. And it's send the password key with another path. And then the receiving agent receive the uh, uh, encrypted message through another one path, and the password or the key from another path, and decrypt it and then understand the things. And there are various ways to handle this kind of a scenario, that how it can be done there. Now this one is ontology. Now this one is the, so till so far we have discussed the philosophical view, that how multi-agent system, what's the philosophy behind, what has to be the property. Now when you're designing it, you have to develop the ontology first. So what is the microgrid ontology? It's a, you can say, a tree kind of structures, so that who is affecting what. So we have few things in microgrid: concepts, predicates, and agent actions. So what are the things there? The things which are there, that we have PV, we have fuel cell, we have DG, we have load, we have PCC, and each one is having some certain property. Somebody is having SOC, somebody is having power level. Now these are the properties. There is another kind of predicates which predict basically whether it's a grid connected or not grid connected, whether the load is shaded or not shaded, or information about the power. And then the agent actions are there, either switch is on or switch is out, or the battery is charged or discharged. We need to develop this whole concept, whole this ontology structure first, and then we assign the things to the various agents there. So this one is basically how it can be realized. We This one is a computing RTDS system. This one is RTDS rack, where you can do the real simulations, real-time simulations, and the rest of the simulations you can do it there. I'll show you the figure where how we have done it. So I'll take one example, a simple example, so that everybody can understand, and then we can move further. Uh, I'll, I'll I'll start with this example first. So this is the case. This one is a case study we can think talk about. Okay. So this is the case. You can think it like this: that this one is a hospital. So the hospital is big one, and which has houses. The solar power plant is also there at the hospital, and each hospital has ICU, X-ray room, medical shop. So the hospital and the houses, they are powered with solar. You can see the solar is there, and they receive power from the grid also. So grid power comes through the distribution transformer, and then we have circuit breaker here, which close and open, and we have circuit breaker at every place. Okay, and say the fault occurs there. Fault occurs here. This one is ABC. What is this? Is fault. Fault occurring means your grid is out. Okay, or there is a fault uh, on the grid side. Okay, so what is happening now? Now let's understand how this structure is multi-agent. So what we do, we put agent everywhere. Okay, we put one agent here, we put agent on the here, transformer, at the house, at the hospital, at the solar power plant, at ICU, X-ray room, medical shop, and this one is multi-agent system. Say the structure is something like a centralized kind of structure. Now the agent which is at this place, distribution transform, as soon as fault occurs, it sends it, and it will tell this centralized unit that there is a fault on the grid side. So as soon as it receives the message, it send the message to this agent which is at circuit breaker. Okay, you open because there is a fault. Now it will open and isolate this faulty from the rest of the system. The system is still working because it is getting a power from this side, from solar power plant. So this is the first step. Next, it will take inputs from the solar agent at the solar power plant, that how much you are generating, how much capacity you have. At the same time, it will get information from hospital and house, how much you are consuming. Okay, and it keep on making a balance there. Still, it keep on receiving with some time stampings that okay, power is there or more power, but I can supply up to next 4 hours. And because now the sun is also going down, so I can supply just for next four hours. Then it will again take the information from hospital and house, this system, how much you are consuming. So they give the information based upon this condition that it is having less power. This multi-agent will pass information to this circuit breaker that you open up because we have very less power with that. Then it will open. So now the whole power which is from the solar will be given to the hospital, and everything is moving with time. What will happen after certain 1 hour or so? It solar power will pass another message that okay, I have power. I can give a power, but now my power is just in next 3 hours or 2 hours I can supply. Then it will get the information from CB4, CB4, and CB5 and 6 that okay, how much you are consuming, and based upon that its calculation that how long you want to run. Multi-agent will send information to the medical shop first because this one is the least critical, that okay, you open up, so it will open, then the power will be supplied to this ICU and X-ray room. Still there is no power, then it will open circuit breaker 5, so that whole power will be given to ICU for as long as possible. And this process keep on working. Say the fault is now cleared on this side, then the agent here which is at the distribution, it will pass the information that okay, now fault is cleared, and then this multi-agent here system, it will make okay, you turn on all the devices like this. So this is how the things are being automatically being done, and that is how this whole setup. Now this one is one kind, this one is centralized coordination. It can be a decentralized also depending upon how you are designing it. And the results, so this one is ontology. You can see you have AC, two agents there. One is to the circuit breaker one, second agent is taken uh, non-critical load, least critical load, medium critical load, most critical load, and working like this. So depending upon how you are doing it, and this is what how we have done. We have done it on platform. So you can see here, this one is MATLAB model. You have grid side here, you have load measurements here, you have grid connected inverter. This one is your solar side, and the results are very, the transformation transform from one state to another, pole to node fault, and that is very smooth and very fast. More on it, if you want to see, you can see our papers. We have published some good articles on this one. Okay, so this is how it works, and this is the working procedure of it. It's a very smooth transition from one state to another state, and we have done various case studies like before 5 p.m., during the transition, after 5 p.m., and something like that. Or when we are resynchronizing to the main grid, what will happen and how the results are being. That is one kind of a case study. This is another case which I wish to discuss with you. So this one is a microgrid. We have taken data for an island uh, from southeast of Asia. So there we have what we have. We have four DGs: DG1, DG2, DG3, DG4. We have battery storage. We have load, and we have two PV farms and wind farms. Okay, and then and this is the architecture you can see here. There are various platforms. The question may be there at the end from that which we have to use. Uh, so we have developed another kind of a platform which is MATLAB based. Otherwise, there are various other platforms are there. If there is any query on this, that one I'll discuss later. But you can see this one on the right hand side. This one is Simulink model, real model. You can see generators. You can see two PVs and two wind and load and battery. And this one is the agent platform, which is in MATLAB framework on the second machine, not on the same machine. And these two machines are connected with each other, and both are running. Both are programs are running. This one is running on one machine. This one is running on one machine. So they are connected with each other through a communication cable, and whatever the states being generated here, the decision being taken here. No decision is taken here. There are on this side only the actions are being done. Decisions are being taken on the left hand side. This is the picture of that one. You can see here this decision part is done on a laptop, and whereas the this actual real event is on the desktop, and they are connected with a cable there. So this one is like a multi-agent system. You can work on it. So this one is a real platform, real system you can think of outside somewhere, where from there either through wire or through wireless you are getting the signals, and then decisions are being taken in the control room itself. So this is what we have done here. What is the idea? Idea is that okay, there is a load, there we have DGs, there we have solar, there we have PV. How to use these units in such a way that we can have a maximum profit in the sense of like saving the energy. So when we talk about this, we need for, if we are talking about the generation from PV, we need to forecast it. So that okay, how much will be PV after this much of time? So we have a put a for PV forecasting agent on first PV unit. We have put another forecasting agent on the second PV unit. Similarly, two winds, so we put a wind forecasting agent on one wind unit, second wind forecasting agent. This agent is nothing but this one is forecasting how much is the wind power generated. Similarly, load, similarly the battery. So this layer is the forecasting layer. All the job of all these agents is to forecast the state. And then there is a unit commitment agent. What is the job of unit commitment? That which unit has to be on and how much. Similarly, we have DGs there, 4 DGs. Okay, so if not supplied from here, then we take from the DGs. Okay, so this is how the things are, and this is how they talk to each other. You can see here it is 0 hour, 1 hour, 11 hours. So this keep on running. Okay, we have agents, PV1 agent, PV2 agent, wind1 agent, wind2 agent, load, SOC agent, UC agent, battery agent. So they are talking to each other. You can see the wires, and you can see the parameters they are transferring from one agent to another agent. What they are doing actually, it is something like we do in microprocessor. First the signal goes from one agent to another one, and then receipts comes back. Once receipts come back, there is handshaking between the first agent and the second agent, and then they send the messages. So the message goes with certain kind of tags. These tags has values basically. How much is to be taken from where? This is to you how you are designing it. Okay. So initially this one is like with and without agent. So this one is without. You can see all the 4 DGs they are running, and they are running at a low values. They are consuming DG. They are consuming a lot of diesel basically, consuming a lot of fuel products. Whereas if you use the multi-agent structure, you can see that only 2 are working and rest are there is no need of them. That means these in here they are not efficiently used there. Whereas in this case, you can see here there is certain kind of a dip and all these things you will find. This is because here at 4 hours there is a change in the speed, a change in the wind speed we have expected. So many scenarios we try to develop it, try to address it, that how this system will work. This is the how it is working there. Any more some more slides, some cases are there which we have tried on different structures, self-healing, but we are not discussing. So this is just I want to explain here how it is communicating. Okay, So this one is your agent, and it passed the message to other agent. Request is sent, then request is received there. So that is connected. Okay. So that means some other agent is there. Then it's a connection request goes, and then connection comes back. Similarly with other agents, and once they are connected, they send the information. So there are various platforms which are being used. So one of the most popular one is JAD, that is Java based multi-agent system, multi-agent platform, which is being used, but we found a lot of issues when we are connecting with MATLAB and JET platform. So from there we shift. This one, this picture is from the Java platform. Okay, then from there we shift to modify the MATLAB state models to act as an agent. So this one is MATLAB state model, which is there in MATLAB itself, and then connecting your MATLAB with MATLAB is a bit easy. So this works fine for our problem. So here in this case, it's like this. This real structure can be anything. Uh, can be your any. It may be electric vehicle where you have many voltages, many sensors, many decision variables, and then you have one unit where each one, because there we are putting a lot of sensors. So the sensors will send the message at one unit, computing unit, small computing unit, with which each sensor is represented like this. And then there we can have architecture which can take a decision that okay, what has to be done. Like a sensor send a message, information that the light outside light our outside environment is dark. Okay, so if it is dark, then that information comes here, and then this agent will send the information to the uh, agent whose response, who will make the, or who will turn on the lights automatically, so that the visibility is good enough. So that is how this one is just one simple example, but you can put many such things there, many such type of things there, and you can realize those structures by using such type of architectures. So that's all about just an overview on the philosophy of uh, philosophy of this thing, multi-agent system, uh, implementation, and one case study. So now I'm open for the queries. I can understand you have a lot of queries. So let's move to the queries part. And then if you have any, please put it forward.
So thank you, sir, for your excellent session, sir.
Yeah, please.
Now the session is open to participants. Participants, you can post your queries in chat box, or you can unmute your mic.
Yeah, please. Either you write there or you can unmute and put your queries. I'll happy to answer those.
Sir, participants has raised one question, sir.
Yes,
Sir,
please.
so autocorrect switch is available in electrical vehicle. Is it
Mhm.
connected to controller, and how it is correct the problem?
Which one?
The autocorrect switch is available in electrical vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is controlled. It is connected to controller. If it is connected to controller, then how it is correct the problems?
Uh,
They're asking.
I don't know. I don't know that okay how it is being connected, because that is not exactly direct connected here related to this one. But if anybody can give me idea that how, for what purpose it is there, because so this switch I don't know. So then I can put my view on that one, that how it is working. If anybody can put it that okay which switch, because nomenclature may be different. I understand in a different way. So if the question you put it uh, more detailed question, then I can answer it properly.
Yes, sir.
What switch exactly, for what purpose it is there?
Sir, actually, the in group itself had updated that is an autocorrect switch. So if switch is maximum for yes, sir.
Sir, Actually, autocorrect switch is nothing but if any breakdown, if the vehicle is breakdown at some situation, autocorrect switch is given in the two-wheelers. If the press the autocorrect switch means if we can run another 50 to 100 kilometers or another nearby any service station or something like that. If that autocorrect switch will
Okay,
connect it
okay,
to
okay.
petrol.
Yeah. So, okay, fine, fine. Now I got your point. You can put it like it can realize by many ways. One, you are doing it manually. Okay. But if manually you are switching it to that one, but if I want to put it in another way that I can use again a multi-agent framework. I need two agents for that. One agent to sense that something wrong is happening somewhere. Okay, maybe you are talking about the breakdown. So that agent job is, and that agent is nothing but a sensor which can detect it is some breakdown is happening there, and that message goes to the central processing unit where it is evaluated, and then that passes the signal to that switch which you are manually making it on, but instead of that you can make it automatically on. So you will not feel or you will not understand what is happening, but it will give you two things. It automatically switch from that state, if the breakdown, to the another state, as well as it will display on your screen that breakdown has occurred, and you can go maximum say 30 kilometer more. So try to reach to a place where you can get your things corrected. Just one example, new cars are there like released this year. You'll find that if you are running them and if your tire pressure is low, you will immediately you receive a message on your screen that your tire pressure is low, get it filled, something like that. So that is basically more automation and all these things. Nothing like something centralized, but a sensor is there which is sensing that information, and that information is being displayed on your screen. So these are the things which are being presented in a different way, but yeah, you can develop a certain kind of a network within a vehicle, so that more things can be automated and in a more secure way. I hope I'm able to make things a bit clear.
Thank you, sir. Sir, the next question is on, sir, fault locating in microgrids with low fault currents is an open issue. What
Mhm.
alternates are there?
Yeah, so in microwave, when you're talking about fault currents, okay, so one way is we keep on monitoring the parameters, and then use some kind of a mathematical approach, model approach, or machine learning approach to find out the features. And if my features are deviating from my standard benchmarks, then we can easily recommend it, whether it's a fault or it's a disturbance or what kind of things are happening there. And lot of theories being proposed on that one, because if we say low voltage, low current faults and all that, so there people are talking about why not to convert these signals, low voltage or current signals, in a form of a spectrums, and then perform some spectrum analysis, and then use certain kind of a mathematics or machine learning tools, so that we can easily classify them whether it's a fault or not a fault. So that is how you can do it.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. So the next question is, how can we choose the noise power to test my control system robustness?
Yeah, this one is very important. And see, the, the e- best way is check out your problem. Say my problem is to control a robo. Okay, so robo movement is there, and say I'm working on say humanoid. So when it is moving from one step to another step, okay, so what is how much is the deviation is being allowed? So there are various ways. Statistical way are you collect various patterns, and from there you can find out the variance, left variance and right variance. The easy way, another easy way is uh, when your system is working realistically, then okay, how much deviation is possible? from one state to another state. That is the first thing. Second thing is if it is vibrating. Okay, so if my or when it is moving from one place to another, and if there are certain kind of vibrations there, or we call say noise signals are there, so we need to see that whether it's a repetitive, cyclic, or it is pulsative, or it is a combination of pulsate spikes and broad pulses. So that from there we can characterize it that okay, if you want to study it, then what type of noise you need to put it in the control system so that we can develop a robust controller, because it varies from the application to application. It's not like a spike noise is always there. Maybe spike noise is there in case of some motor application, but not in process control. In process control we have different kind of noises. So depending upon the application side, you can make a decision that okay, what type of the noise we have to take care for the robust control process.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, next question is from participant. So, what are the future research areas in hybrid renewable grids?
Yeah, that is grid connectivity is one. How you are connecting to the various things to your grid, and then the control of that. So localized control or distributed control or centralized controls. So the major areas are models. That is still a challenge. Another one is the prediction, because renewables when you are putting in, you have to predict a lot of things. So still our models are not so accurate on those things. Another one is your power electronic circuitry, how you are connecting to the grid. So people are coming with different topology. And then the last one is a control, whether you are looking for a centralized control or distributed control or local control or wide area control. So how that you have to go. So it's still full of it, because the things are still means like things are still challengeable in the way that we are in a process of implementing. So when we implement one approach, then we come out okay, the challenges are still to be added there, because earlier grids are there where we have some kind of uncertainties were not there. So since renewables and green energy they are coming in, uncertainty is coming in a big way, and in future dimensions will change, because when we are saying the electric vehicle comes into the picture, so they will act as a source and a sink at the same time, and that will make your system highly volatile, and then how to control the system in such type of scenarios. So these are the future things which people still means people they are working on to address this type of things.
Yes, sir. Sir, shall we go for another two questions? Or it's
Yeah, please, we have
yes,
time.
sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Uh, the next question is from participant, sir. So, smart metering in microgrids, how it can be implemented?
Yeah, smart metering is basically actually it is there are various levels of smart metering. Okay, so one level is something like okay, we have a meter, and we that gives us the every information about the houses, everything about the load, like okay, active load is how much, reactive load is how much, and then what is your consumption pattern, and then what is THD, and then to make it more secure enough, it is connected wirelessly to a local center, so that the information is shared there to to remove theft and all these things. So this one is one kind of structure, but another structure which is coming is basically not only this. In future, you will find that tariffs are will be there. We have right now we have load based tariff, that our load is this much, then this is the tariff, and if the load is this much, this is the tariff. But in future you'll find load, it's a dynamic tariffing is there, pricing will be there. So in that kind of a scenario, you may expect that okay, your smart meter will give you idea or advice that okay, how to use your home appliances. So home energy management, or that can be expected in the smart grids, so that you can use you can complete your day-to-day routine with the least consumption of electricity. In other level, we can have some kind of structures like uh, check out those things, that who is injecting how much of the reactive power into the system, and all those issues there uh, which are being done by physical, but in future we expect to be done by the smart meters, and the whole information being shared through communication protocol at the local server of the area, or a big server in the city. So this is what we are expecting from the smart meters.
Yes, sir. So thank you, sir. So the next question, sir, can we do frequency regulation through grid feeding inverter in microgrid?
Yeah, see, yes, you can do that. You can do that, but see, inverter, you can use it for many. I mean, there are two things when we talk about, and the frequency of the grid. When you are talking about, we are injecting it to control it. So why we need to understand it in a very simple way. Why there is a change in the frequency, and that is because of the difference between the loads and the supply, and that you can control by injecting something into it or taking extra from to it. You can do that, but from there we need to see that how much, or the regulations of particular country and the regulating bodies, how much they allow you to perform that. But yes, you can do it. You can do by using inverters into the system.
Okay. Thank you, sir. So the next question is, how can select the voltage and the current PA controller parameters in an islanded microgrid?
Yeah, in see, islanding is basically, you take it. Islanding is in this way that, okay, if you have some kind of a generation, and you're uh, not taking from the grid side, you are working in islanded mode of operation, and there various things are there to be analyzed, that okay, how my islanded, when I'm working in islanded mode of operation, so how my inverters are being used there. Then if the islanding is not there, how I'm synchronizing to the grid mode of operation. In this, if I talk about this scenario, islanding can be of two types, or intentional and unintentional. We worked on certain thing and then proposed a new inverter, patented later on also. You can check out research articles, my research articles with my scholars, that can we predict in advance that islanding is going to occur, so that my inverter can change its mode of operation, so that there is no loss of any power, or anything in that kind of a scenario. So it's totally a big area to work on. Uh, Rest of the things has supposed to be the same, because it's not like talking about the voltage level and current level, because uh, if I'm using grid and your microgrid facilities both, then the voltage has to be the same. But yeah, if you are talking about standalone system, there you can take okay, you can go for some kind of a certain kind of a mechanism, because you are not connected with the grid, so you can have your local network, and there you can decide that okay, what should be the voltage level and the current level. I can share a link, so that if you wish to download the research articles mm, and the related work and some more, including this one and some more PPTs, or algorithms, if you are interested, you can uh, visit this site, and download the things from there. This one is my website, and my mail ID is there. So if you have any queries related to any my research area, you just post it. I'll revert you back through the mail, or you can download it things from there.
So thank you, sir. Sir, sir, we are running short of time. Shall we go for just one another more question, sir?
Yeah, please.
Sir, sir, does the low voltage distribution is feasible? This is last question, sir.
Hello.
Sir, is sir I'm audible, sir?
Yeah, please.
Sir, does the low voltage distribution is feasible?
Low voltage distribution is feasible. That's what I'm saying. If it is a standalone system, then there is no any issue because you have your own network, and then you can put it low voltage there. You can use low voltage distribution there. But other way, if you think of like if it is connected one, then yeah, we have to think over those complexities that okay, how to, because your voltage level is low, system voltage level is something different, so how to switch from one to another one. So if it is a connected one, then we have to think about these complexities. But if it is a remote area, local network and standalone system, then you can think of a low voltage distribution. And I think in some villages people do use it, such type of environments there.
Actually, we are coming to the end part of session. So thank you, sir, for your patient answering for all the queries raised by the participants, sir.
Yeah. Okay.
So at this juncture, on behalf of participants and behalf of the Department of Mechanical Engineering and Sri Shri College of Engineering, so I would like to thank our seventh session resource person, Dr. Rajesh Kumar sir, for accepting our invitation and sparing his valuable time to give an excellent session on distributor control for microgrid. Sir, we are very much happy, sir, and honored to have you in the session, sir. Uh,
Yeah, thanks, Prof, for introducing me to a lot of audiences, and I hope they enjoy this our discussion. Look forward in future to discuss on some certain new things more. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you very much for delivering session, sir. Thank you very
Thank
much, sir.
thank you.